Mr. Robert Llewellyn. Robert, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The panel are going to come and sit up. I will be introducing them in very few moments. I'm just going to quickly do a very brief potted history of why I might be here. In fact, 20 years ago, I was given a ride in an electric car in California, having no idea why they bothered, what it was about, anything to do with it. It just seemed totally bonkers to me. We had this was when I was making a TV show called Scrap Heap Challenge, but we were making the American version, which was called Junkyard Wars, which was exactly the same show, but it was a war, not a challenge. We were at the time obviously involved in the Iraq challenge in this country. But I got this, I had a lift in this car, and it just stuck with me, this experience of going very fast. It was an experimental electric car. Many of the engineers that were working on it went on to work at Tesla, and so it was pre all the stuff we now know about. But it did stay with me, and it was that and the Prius that got me interested in alternatives to combustion engines and what that might mean. It took a long time. It wasn't an overnight Damascene moment. It took a long time. But from 2010, I've been making a series on YouTube called Fullycharged Show, which is about electric vehicles, renewable energy, blah, blah, blah. And that has grown from really almost a hobby to a sort of a absolutely knackering full-time job. I'm too old, I should retire. My dad was looking after his chickens and gardening when he was my age, but I have to keep going. And it's enormously fun, and we have had incredible experiences all over the place doing this show, and seen an incredible change in the last 10 years. Absolutely extraordinary, and particularly in the last 5. Real acceleration of those things. And so I'm here because at my house today, I'm very happy because it's a sunny day. I have 5.5 kilowatts of solar on the roof. I have batteries in the garage. I have a Mixergy hot water tank, a load of equipment made by My Energy, which is absolutely brilliant, which switches all the power into different places. A Zappi electric car charger that will charge a car today just from solar, not from anything else. All those things are amazing. We cover all those areas of the world, and it's of the technology, and that's kind of a very important part of why we're here and what we're talking about here today. So, I mean, the show we're doing is as much about. There's no point arguing. Cars get the most views, but we're determined to keep pushing other things. And in fact, about the 4th most viewed show we've ever made is about the Tesla Powerwall. So, you know, there is interest in that. That's enough from me. I want to introduce a panel who are each going to do their little pitch about COP25, why we're here, what's going on. I'll introduce them one by one. Dale Vince, founder and owner of Ecotricity. Ruth Dooley, chair of Gfirst LEP. Ruth there. Professor Dave Worsley, Swansea University. We've been to see where you are, Dave. Brilliant stuff you're doing there. Fantastic. And Nicola Bird, founder and managing director of Axxcel, is there. So, do you want to... you go first.
Good morning.
Oh, do you want... And the mic, the mic's there if you want the mic. I think... Oh, no, you've got one there.
Oh.
There you go.
Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of Gfirst LEP, could I welcome you to today's event. I'm Ruth Dooley. I'm a tax and forensic partner at Hazelwood's Accountant, and recently I've been appointed chair of Gfirst LEP. I took over from Diane Savory on the 1st of September, so I'm fresh into the role, although I have been on the board for the last 2 years, and I've been involved with Gfirst LEP for over 10 years since it started, one way or another. So some of you may be saying, what is Gfirst LEP? Well, it's what it says on the label. It's a local enterprise partnership. And it's a partnership. It's business-led, and it's a partnership between the private sector, the public sector, education, and the voluntary sector. And it's all about the economic strategy for Gloucestershire. And over the last 10 years, the LEP has secured over 100 million of funding for various projects in Gloucestershire, and from that has leveraged another 500 million of funding from the public and the private sector. And actually coming here is really brilliant because 10 million of that has been invested locally. It's been invested in the bridge that most of you will have come over on the way here, the A38 Barclay Bridge. It's been invested, 3 million was invested in the C11 Cyber Centre with University of Gloucestershire. and also the Green Skills Centre. Green stands for Gloucestershire Renewable Energy, Engineering and Nuclear Skills, and it's all about STEM subjects for the youngsters. And that brings me on to the next part of what Gfirst LEP is contributing to the county. We put together an economic strategy for the future, and we consulted with 5,000 young people to do so. And not surprisingly, green became one of the main planks of that economic strategy, along with agri-tech and cyber. And the mission is to make Gloucestershire the greenest place to work and live in the country, which I think you'll agree is a noble ambition. So, how is this going to be done? Well, part of the offering is through our growth hubs, and I'm sure you're all aware of the growth hubs across the county. There are growth hubs, the first one in Gloucester, the second one was, well, I don't know what order they're in, but there is Stroud, which is opening, having its official opening tomorrow. Doina I was speaking to earlier, and she was reminding me that it's going to be opening tomorrow, but I do know because I'm going along. Last week, the Forest of Dean was opened, and next year we should be opening the Cheltenham Growth Hub. And the growth hubs are very much tuned into the zero emissions economy, purpose of the county, and are offering all sorts of help to get there. So local businesses can go to the growth hub, both online and at the physical centres I mentioned, and get go to webinars, seminars, workshops. There's going to be online tools available and help with short-term and long-term strategies for businesses to get to net zero. The growth hubs will help with other aspects, including sustainable actions and climate policies, as well as environmental certification, and crucially, pointing businesses towards what funding might be available. So Gloucestershire businesses need to get along to the growth hubs to try and stay ahead of the curve as far as the path towards net zero. Thank you everyone for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. And now if we could hear from Professor Dave Worsley. Thank you, Dave.
Morning. Hello. Hi. All right. Now, this is unusual for me. I've actually got a script. Sam Stacey saw me writing this earlier on, right? Detailed files. I wanted to try and get across sort of 5 things about the history and how we got to this point with the Active Building Centre. And it all actually comes from work that was with Tata Steel, who are here today. Where are you guys? Yay. And Tata Steel were looking to increase the lifetime of their roofing products. That doesn't sound very exciting, but some of my colleagues who are here, Justin and others, were working at the site on the time, and we developed new coatings which enable things to last for 40 years, guaranteed. Oh, exciting. Yeah. What's this got to do with today? Well, we got to a point where we realised there wasn't any point in going to 45 years or 50 years or 60 years for a guarantee. But these buildings that are out there that are made of steel are out there every day, and all they're doing is keeping the rain out. And we thought, well, hang on a minute. Why don't we, put a solar cell or something on them, so that they can actually generate their own power. And that's where the journey towards active buildings started. So we started looking at printing photovoltaics, and that work continues. And then we got a bit annoyed at one time, because obviously in South Wales where we were based, people are saying, well, solar power, the sun never shines. What are you talking about? You're nutter, right? So we're like, oh, God. So we're going to have to demonstrate this, right? So over Christmas, one Christmas, I probably had too many gins, and I thought, right, okay, we're going to build a house. I said, we're going to build a house. And of course, I turned up at the university after Christmas and told everyone we're going to build a house. And excuse my language, but everybody said, that's a shit idea. And I went, oh, right. And it turned out we just opened our new Bay campus and we didn't have quite enough teaching space. So then I managed to persuade the Vice-Chancellor to give us £500,000 so that we could build an active classroom, as we called it then. The joke being it wasn't just passive, it was actually better than passive, it was actually generating its own power. So that's where the active classroom came from. and was a first of a kind because it was not only involving sort of off-site construction, a panelised steel-based system. It also introduced NSG, Pilkington, into our equation, because clearly buildings need windows as well as steel for the roof and walls. What was brilliant about that is that we then introduced different types of storage. We could also generate heat using the walls. And that technology is now being rolled out in a number of countries through the Tata Group, particularly in India. We're currently trying to build 2 classrooms, and it's been a bit challenging for 2 reasons. 1, the pandemic, and 2, the monsoon season. Who knew? But there we are, we're nearly there with those 2. And that brings me on to the next thing that we did, which is thinking about how the buildings themselves could solve other problems, right? So who here today has come in an electric car? No. Now, I'm going to be slightly more controversial now and say a battery electric car. Right, good, right? This is getting better, right? It's getting better. I tried this at the beginning of transforming construction, and there was like 2 of us in the room, and I felt a bit embarrassed, so we're getting there. But the good news about our electric cars is we're powering them from the buildings, right? So the buildings, you know, your car's sat there for 95% of its life doing nothing. And as Bob is doing, you can charge using the sunshine or from yesterday's sunshine that's been stored in a battery. That's really brilliant for zooming about. So that's how I got here today. Where are we going? Well, I just had a great chat with Joe from Active Building Centre upstairs about housing. So we'll come back to that now. And there's a great project that they're working on at the Active Building Centre in Flintshire. And they're looking at building some social housing. Now in Wales, where I come from, I don't have a very outrageous Welsh accent, but I am Welsh, just in case you didn't know. There are 28% of the population in fuel poverty, right, which is quite shocking, really. Meaning people have to choose between food and energy. And that was before the energy pricing went peculiar recently. So this housing project, though, that's being put together in Flintshire, the average house, if it was built to building regulations, would use £1,300 worth of energy every year. And if they introduce the active building principles, the occupants of the house will actually gain £100 every year and have no bills. I think that's amazing, right? And why don't we make everything like that? To build on your point, this doesn't happen without people. All the people in this room, all the skilled researchers and innovators, the business folk, but also the young people. And training the young people in this centre are going to be very, very important, a really important resource. One of the biggest challenges we've had with active buildings in practice is actually putting them together in the right way, right? Because it's all new technology, and people will quite happily blame the technology as opposed to having put something in upside down, yeah? So that's very, very important. And as we look to the future, you know, we're told by Bojo we're going to build back better, and that's true. But my hope would be that we will build active, yeah? So that all of the buildings that we build and the retrofits that we do are actually adding energy to our network and helping us drive electric cars, helping us drive our heat pumps, and we're not building buildings that people from the Elizabethan period would recognise. That's all I have to say about the subject, and I shall pass on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Nicola.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to sit because my legs are a bit wobbly. I haven't had a drink. I just get very nervous. So I've come here today with 2 different hats on. My experience and I suppose my skill set is in construction. So I'm a 3rd generation of quite a large construction business in Gloucestershire. And we predominantly are in the house building market, so we develop our own, but we also work on as a contractor for the major house building group. My second hat then is on the education side. So in the introduction you would have heard that I'm now the founder and managing director of a new construction skills accelerator centre, which has been co-funded by Gfirst LEP and also privately funded by KW Bell Group. And it is the UK's first co-funded industry-led construction school, which basically has the ability to change the face of construction education for what our future needs will be. So I'm just really interested in gathering information myself today. I am a panellist on the next section, but I'm really interested to hear and get energised by what people have to say in the room. When we talk about sustainability, when we talk about net zero carbon, and I talk to people on the ground. I spent a lot of time in our businesses talking to people who are doing the work and are creating these buildings. And if you speak to these people about these words, you completely intimidate them, and they don't understand. Generally, this is what does the word sustainability mean? It'll mean so many different things to so many different people. And so it's really good to be here today, so I can try and sort of break down those barriers and that wording, so I can hopefully pass it on through Axxcel, through our new learners that are coming through, but also upskill even the huge CEOs and the managing directors of the major house building group, and push them and kind of call them out. Make them accountable for the changes we're going to make, because they do build over 50% of our housing stock, and I can tell you now that they're not pushing any agenda whatsoever. You know, we are in close contact with major house building group a lot, and we are pushing for apprentices, we're pushing for new education, we're pushing for better standards, and it shouldn't be the supply chain making these changes, it should be the people at the top making these reforms and pushing it down the supply chain, but we're doing all the pushing ourselves. So this is a great sort of platform for me here to go out now to industry and hopefully have an impact.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dale.
Thank you. I also haven't had a drink, but I'm going to sit here and just chat. I'm based in Gloucestershire, and I began my journey in renewable energy in the early 90s. I was a traveller living on a hill with a windmill on the roof of my trailer, and kind of au fait with small wind energy. Became aware of the climate crisis in 1991, and that energy was the biggest single cause of it in our country, the burning of fossil fuels. And so I founded Ecotricity, the world's first green energy company, in 1995, and we set about trying to change that. Later on, in the early 2000s, we added green gas to our green electricity agenda. We built windmills, solar panels, that kind of stuff. And feeling at that time that we had energy kind of under control, we knew what we needed to do to power ourselves with renewable energy. We went looking for the second and third biggest causes of the climate crisis, because it seemed to make sense that there had to be a second and a third. And we found transport and food to be those issues, and that energy, transport and food together, those three things, are 80% of everybody's personal carbon footprint. And for me, that was a really special moment or finding, because too often we all feel overwhelmed by the climate crisis, by the scale of it, by the impact that we think we can have on it personally because we are so small. But actually, every day we choose to spend money on three things: energy, transport and food, how we power our homes, how we travel, and what we eat. And those decisions decide which way the world goes around. So we have much more power in this problem than we think. Excuse me. And so that became our mission in the early 2000s, energy, transport and food. We built a car, the Nemesis, Britain's first electric supercar. I remember being on the A419 near Cirencester with Bobby at the wheel.
Terrifying.
With a very heavy right foot. A nearly 350 horsepower car as well. And it was quite a kind of scary moment, but fun. Putting that car on the road in 2010, I discovered or learned really that the big obstacle to electrifying transport, cars in particular, was going to be charging points. There were very few cars on the road. Nobody was building charging points because there were very few cars. And I could see that people wouldn't buy cars if there was nowhere to charge, and so we built the electric highway, a national network of charging points, one of the first in the world. And And we moved on. We sold that a few months ago this year, actually, figuring it was time for us to do something different. In food, we've been advocates of plant-based living for a long time, and it really only manifests itself in our business in 2010 when we rescued Forest Green Rovers, our local football club. And since then, we've built a business making school dinners, plant-based school dinners for primary schools called the Devil's Kitchen. And the most recent thing we did is kind of nothing to do with energy, transport and food in a way. We're making diamonds from the atmosphere, from excess carbon dioxide. We launched it a few months ago. But our mission is to get information in front of people, to show people what the problems are and what they can do about it themselves. And we've really found football to be the most amazing platform for doing that. And we like to say it doesn't matter whether it's burgers, cars or football, and now diamonds. We don't have to give up things to live a greener life. We just have to do them differently. So that's our key message. And I'm going to stop there.
Brilliant. Thank you.